and welcome to Unraveled. I'm your host, Marvi Sirmed. Immediately after the brutal Pahalgam attack on April 22nd, India blamed Pakistan for the terrorist attack. Not just that, it has also taken provocative steps, very provocative, including suspending the Indus Water Treaty or holding Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, whatever that means. We will ask our guest in a little while. But it's a rare, the Indus Water Treaty is a rare legacy of cooperation between two hostile neighbors. With one move, water has now been weaponized. What does this mean for Pakistan's already stressed rivers, its agriculture, its food security, and its fragile ecology? And how real is the threat of water becoming the next front line of conflict in South Asia between two nuclear neighbors? To help us navigate the science, the strategy, and the survival stakes, we are joined by renowned hydrologist Dr. Hassan Abbas. Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan Abbas, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Dr. Abbas, we will jump right into that. Practically speaking, what can India now do to Pakistan's water flows after suspending the treaty or holding the treaty in abeyance, to be exact, and how quickly could we see the impacts?
Oh, we should be extremely thankful to India for doing it. This treaty should have never been signed, and we waited for 65 years to get, for the first time, an opportunity to get what we rightly deserve from these rivers, something we surrendered in 1960. We surrendered our legal rights, we surrendered our human rights, we surrendered our rivers, we surrendered our environment.
Explain that. How did we surrender? I mean, I was listening to some of the Indian commentators, and they were expressing the same views. They say Indians think that they are at a disadvantage after signing this treaty. They think they have surrendered three precious rivers to Pakistan. Now, please explain for our viewers
how come they have surrendered three rivers to Pakistan? I mean, the river which is flowing in Pakistan, 90% of those rivers are flowing in Pakistan. How on earth they have surrendered? I mean, they even, they say Pakistan got 80% of water. I mean, more than 80% of that water is generated within the landscape of Pakistan. The Kabul River, which flows from Afghanistan, even that volume has been added by India as given to them, by them to us. I mean, look at that. I mean, it's you see what we did. We, first of all, in order to get into the negotiations of this treaty.
Yeah, but before that, you're saying something very important. But before that, I really want our viewers to understand, because many of our viewers are, very faintly familiar with all of what we, routinely talk about. What were the main features of Indus Water Treaty? Why does Pakistan and India both, modern Pakistanis and modern Indians both believe that they are at a disadvantage after signing the treaty? What exactly the treaty says?
It doesn't matter to begin with. What does the treaty say? I mean, what does the treaty say is very trivial. How that saying came into being is important. I mean, unless we don't understand it, we will not understand why I made a few comments right in the beginning. You see, first of all, what is a treaty? There are two things about a treaty. One specific to water treaty and one in general. A treaty is negotiated between two parties when the two parties have initial position is different. If their initial position is the same, treaty is not needed. Treaty is needed when two parties are at two different positions. And then the negotiations take place and they meet somewhere in between, some give and take by both parties. Okay. And if there is no give and take from one side, that means it's not a treaty. It is just one agenda imposed on the other party. Am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, the treaty would mean that you met somewhere in between, maybe a little bit on this side or a little bit on that side, maybe right in the middle. But still, there has to be some give and take. I mean, there has to be some give and take. And otherwise, it is not a treaty. It is just capture of one party over the other.
So
Okay?
you think through Indus Water Treaty, India was at the sole advantage and Pakistan actually lost. Pakistan lost what?
I will give you the exact historical references
Hmm.
on that. The second thing, when we come to the water treaties,
Hmm.
an upper riparian doesn't need a treaty because upper riparian has the power to do whatever he wants to do because she enjoys the control on the river. She can do whatever she wants to do with the rivers, but
Hmm.
downstream, lower riparian country, she
Hmm.
would need a treaty to protect herself because
Hmm.
whatever you do upstream will have
Hmm.
impact on downstream, but whatever you do downstream does not impact upstream. Therefore,
Yeah.
all the water treaties in the world are there to protect the lower riparian.
Hmm.
And precisely what are the protections that are needed by a lower riparian or for that matter, any lower riparian?
Hmm.
First of all, you want the water should not be diverted in an amount where it starts impacting your ongoing use.
Hmm.
So divergence, it protects you from excessive divergence.
Hmm.
Number two, it protects you from control of the flow.
Hmm.
Because when you build a large dam, instead of river running on its natural rhythm, it starts, it is being controlled by the upper riparian.
Hmm.
And the natural flow, why it is more important to the lower riparian? Because the ecology and the culture
Hmm.
and the economy has
Yeah.
evolved over time for a lower riparian with the rhythms of the river.
Hmm.
The cropping pattern, the economy, the trade, the commerce, everything is aligned with the rhythms of the river. If you disrupt the rhythm by creating a large dam and controlling the pattern of flow, it can damage the lower riparian.
Yeah.
Therefore, a treaty would protect the lower riparian from excessive damming. And third, and the most important thing is a treaty would protect a lower riparian from pollution. If
Hmm.
upper riparian pollutes, uses the rivers as the sewerage drains,
Hmm.
and it flows down, it impacts the lower riparian. Not just the persons, the economy or culture, it also impacts the environment,
Hmm.
ecosystem, and and the wildlife. Now coming to Indus Waters Treaty. I'm coming to the first point that the two
Hmm.
parties should meet somewhere in between. The initial position of the two countries was, as tabled for the first time in writing before the World Bank in 1953, was India said there were few details, but broadly, India said that she wants to retain 100% of the eastern rivers for
Hmm.
herself, which included Ravi, Beas, and Satluj. And she wanted to get at least 7% waters from the western rivers.
Hmm.
Pakistan's initial position was that she wanted to retain 100% of the western rivers, which were Chenab, Jhelum, and Sindh.
Hmm.
And Pakistan said that I can allow up to 30% use by India of the eastern rivers. In other words, Pakistan wanted to retain 100% of the western rivers and 70% of the eastern rivers. India, on the other hand, wanted to retain 100% of the eastern rivers and 7% of the western rivers. That was
7%.
that was the initial position,
Okay.
and that was tabled in 1953. Now, what do you expect happens in 1960 when the treaty is signed? Did we meet somewhere in between,
Hmm. No.
or totally onto one side, and then not just totally onto one side, but something which was not included in the initial position was added to the demands of India. India in 1960, when the treaty is signed, it got 100% of the eastern rivers, 7% of the western rivers, and something amazing, the
Hmm.
permission to dump 4 wastewater drains into Ravi and Satluj and into Pakistan.
I mean, was this part of the treaty?
It became part of the treaty, but it was not part of the initial position of India. So they got their 100% of their initial position plus an additional huge advantage of dumping their wastewaters into Pakistan. And not just this clause is very amazing and hardly ever talked about. I'd been talking about it, but nobody was listening. But thanks God, now people are listening.
Hmm.
Those 4 drains are Udyara drain, Fazilka drain, Shah Salman drain, and Kasool drain.
Mm-hmm.
They were being used before partition for wastewater from the agriculture sector. And they said that they will continue being dumped in Pakistan. They will bring the wastewater from the agriculture sector. Now, what's wrong with the wastewater of agriculture sector? It has excessive nitrogen, phosphorus, and residues of herbicides and pesticides. Not good for our health, causes eutrophication, plus it contains biological contamination. But then the quality of these waters was made, uh, irrelevant. They said anything that the drains would bring would be taken by Pakistan. So later on, the uh, pollution from all the major cities of East Punjab in India was being poured into these drains. That includes industrial waste, untreated municipal waste, sewerage, untreated. Everything is totally untreated. And even if they dump nuclear waste into these nalas, these drains, according to the treaty, we have to accept anything which is being dumped here. Then Pakistan was asked that as a goodwill, that we will maintain these drains inside Pakistan. And if there is any obstruction, we are bound to, obliged to remove it at our cost so that it doesn't pond back and the backwater curve crosses the boundary into India. And the size of the drains was to be maintained at least for the effective date of the treaty, the size which was on the effective date of the treaty, which was 21st of April 1960. So whatever was the size of those drains, that was to be maintained by Pakistan. And if India wants to put more wastewater into any of those drains, Pakistan was obliged to widen the drain if needed. And again, treaty binds us to do that. India might pay for it or will pay for it according to the treaty. But if India says, here's the payment and do this work, we cannot refuse it. Now,
Okay.
this is what the treaty is. So they got 100% eastern rivers. They got 7% western rivers, plus this thing. This was not even their initial position. So they got even better than what their initial position was. So where is the treaty? There is no treaty. Because I would have accepted it as a treaty if there was some give and take on both sides. This was the position in 1953. In 1954, General Wheeler, who was a former, I think, Corps of Engineers officers, had now joined the World Bank, then the Bank of Reconstruction and Development. When he saw that there was total impasse on the position of both parties and nobody was budging from their demand of 1953, he said these two parties are never going to agree on anything We have to decide it. And he gave a formula. He said, look, here's the international border. Everything on this side of the international border will be India's, and everything on this side of the international border will be Pakistan's. They will not interfere with each other, and they will uh, develop their own systems separately. What did that imply? It implied that 100% western rivers were given to Pakistan and 100% eastern rivers were given to India. So India was forfeiting their 7% share in western rivers, and Pakistan was forfeiting its 70% share, her 70% share in the eastern rivers. So there was some give and take. But for Pakistan, it was not a fair give and take. So Pakistan objected. And India readily accepted this formula. He says, okay, we accept General Wheeler's formula. We don't want nothing from the western rivers. We have got 100% eastern rivers and we'll move on. But Pakistan objected. They said, well, these eastern rivers, a large population of Punjab is dependent on these rivers and is already using these rivers. And that's a legal point, that we had prior use, not even prior appropriation, but prior use. And when now these are the rights of the lower riparians, that if you are already using it, the upper riparian can only fiddle as much as it would not impact the ongoing use or the prior use. So we were already using it. So this was a very strong legal point. But the negotiations went on, and we wanted to get a little bit still coming from the eastern rivers. And otherwise, it is unprecedented before and after this treaty in the world that never a river has been completely shut down. Even America has not completely shut down the rivers they have built dams on flowing into Mexico. China has never, shut a river which is flowing down into Vietnam or Cambodia or those smaller countries. No river has ever been shut down. So Pakistan wanted that these rivers should not be shut down. Some flow should keep coming, and that should be part of the treaty. But lo and behold, in 1960, when the treaty is signed, not only they get their percentage, their desired percentage of 100% eastern rivers, they also get the western rivers, which they agreed to forfeit in 1954. Now, what happened in between? And they also got permission to. Now, the second thing that why I don't consider this as a treaty is that all the infrastructure which was being built without any treaty between 1948 and 1959 by India, which impacted the lower riparian one way or the other, was not according to the international norms. It was the violation of international norms, international conventions, and the rights of the lower riparian, which are recognized by all over the world.
But it was not covered by the treaty.
Treaty was not there yet. 1948 to
after the treaty, what I'm saying is, after the treaty came into force.
The treaty came later. The treaty came later.
It does not touch that subject at all.
Yes. The thing is, you commit a crime which could be taken to the international court. It was committed on ground, but it was not taken to the court yet. Pakistan had the option to go to the international court and ask for their rights as a lower riparian, because they were building dams, they were building diversions, they were building their link canals and everything. They had the plan which they announced in 1948 that they want to shut down these eastern rivers. They were implementing that plan with the help of so many construction companies and financial institutions coming from God knows what all other countries, including USA. I think including Britain. They were like Americans were building their Bhakra Dam, Nangal Dam, and there was a company called I think D&R, which was held by Lilienthal. He was an American. That company was also working in India on these projects. But these projects were without a treaty and they were against the international norms. And Pakistan had a very strong legal case, and Mr. Lilienthal, he was a lawyer and he actually pointed it out earlier in 1951 that Pakistan has a very strong legal case, and if Pakistan goes to the international court, Pakistan will win the case.
Mm-hmm.
And he simultaneously advised that Pakistan should be prevented from going to the international court.
Okay.
So every time we were prevented from going to the international court, and those structures were being built which were diverting our water away from us against the international norms. So come 1959, the World Bank offered to build two dams in Pakistan, Mangla and Tarbela, as part of the deal that if they are diverting your water, you can bring it from here and there. All those details, I'm not going into it. But when they offered to build two dams in Pakistan, they said, if you want money to build these dams, you have to sign the treaty with India.
Okay.
And it was advised by some Pakistanis to our chief decision maker, Field Marshal Ayub Khan, that don't take money for the dams and give away those rivers, because dams are temporary and the giving away of river is permanent. Don't do it. But probably Ayub Khan was more interested in getting a lot of money for so-called development. That was political, that was whatever. So he bulldozed against every sane advice. And he said, we want these dams, we want this money, and let's agree to anything that they are saying. And until that time, the understanding was that they agreed to that 1954 General Wheeler formula. So they will agree that, okay, we take the eastern rivers and we give them the eastern rivers and western will be ours. But when it came to signing the treaty, now India knew that Pakistan wants that loan for the two dams. And this is the condition by the bank for Pakistan to get those loans to sign the treaty. And why bank was putting this condition? Because bank was involved in those international violations with India. So it was the interest of the bank that they get this treaty signed, get the permission of Pakistan in writing that whatever they did in India is agreed by Pakistan, so that later on no one can sue the bank or take the bank to the court. So now India knew that Pakistan wants those loans and they are hell-bent on getting those loans and they will sign everything or anything. So they said, okay, before you were not getting any dams, now you are getting dams, therefore we will get that 7% that we forfeited earlier.
Okay.
And we agreed. And they said, and moreover, we will keep sending this dirty water to you. We'll take all the clean water, but we'll keep on sending the dirty water. And they said, okay, okay, okay. And then this was not a treaty again. It was not yet a treaty. After even being signed, it was not a treaty because it went as an annexure to the funding agreement between India and Pakistan. It was not a treaty. It was not an international treaty. On the day 1960, it was signed. It was an annexure to a funding agreement, countersigned by the bank. William Iliff was the guy who signed on behalf of the bank, Nehru on behalf of India, and Ayub Khan on behalf of Pakistan. So this annexure signed by two heads of states went as an annexure into the funding agreement. And then how it became international treaty? In 1962, almost 1.5 to 2 years later, India picked up this document, this annexure, and took it to the United Nations Register of International Treaties. And they said that because it contains the signatures of the heads of states, so we want to make it a permanent international treaty. And Pakistan did not object. And the treaty entered on request of India into the International Register of UNO's International Register of Treaties in 1962.
But before doing that, did they not discuss it with Pakistan? Did they not, whenever
Pakistan did not object.
no, Pakistan did not
Pakistan
object
was happy.
after it was proposed to the United Nations. But before it, wasn't India supposed to discuss this with Pakistan before making this, suggestion?
I don't know the details. I don't know the details. But if you go to the Indian International Register, it was presented by India, and Pakistan never objected, as far as I know.
Maybe it was
Because
discussed.
so if the rhetoric is that Indians got nothing and they were beaten out of this treaty and Pakistan got everything and blah blah blah,
Hmm.
why would they take it there if they had no advantage getting
Hmm.
out of this treaty?
Hmm.
Okay, and Pakistan lost its three rivers and 7% of western rivers and got into a debt trap that we are still trapped in. We haven't gotten out of it, and we got those dirty drains. Now, those dirty drains are equal to committing an ecocide. Not just they killed the rivers, they killed the downstream environment.
Hmm.
Those drains are so dirty.
Hmm.
There had been so many studies on the water quality of those drains, but we can't do anything about the water quality of those drains. We cannot ask India to please put, we can't even say that please put lesser waste, less toxic waste, less amount of waste. We can't even say that because the treaty allows them and we agreed to that. So this is how this treaty works. Now, one other very important thing about this treaty.
Hmm.
There was no water shortage either in India or in Pakistan,
Hmm.
and a treaty was signed. Generally, the treaty is signed when there is less water and more demand on either
When at
side, or
least
at least
one
on both sides.
party, yeah, when at least one party is desperate, and that is mostly the lower riparian party.
Yes, but then the demand was already being met.
Hmm.
Neither India was running short of water nor
Part-
Pakistan.
Hmm.
No one was running short of water, and yet there was a treaty dividing the waters.
Hmm.
And this, when the negotiations began, when this fight began, and
Hmm.
the World Bank jumped in, it was asked, the question was asked, why you want 100% of the eastern rivers?
Hmm.
You don't need that much water. You already, I mean, 20-30% should be, more should be enough to you. They
Hmm.
said, no, we are not asking these rivers for now. We are asking these for our future. And Nehru said that we are asking these for future, and we want to secure our food and grain for the future, and we will take these rivers to Rajasthan and we will make it an oasis. We will green the Rajasthan. We will irrigate in Rajasthan and
Sounds
all.
like Green Pakistan Initiative.
Yeah,
The
that we will green the
Afghanistan.
Rajasthan.
Hmm.
And now, after 65 years, billions of dollars of investment,
Hmm.
an area of Rajasthan
Hmm.
desert, which is about 4 million acres,
Hmm.
out of which 3.8 million acres have been actually developed as irrigation command areas. More than 500, about 500 kilometers of main canal
Hmm.
with a distribution network of more than 9,000 kilometers
Wow.
is in Rajasthan.
Hmm.
And less than 1% of Rajasthan is green after 65 years. Now,
Hmm.
what does that mean? That the reason they cited to get these three rivers has not been fulfilled by them.
Hmm.
The project that they said will be done with these rivers
Hmm.
has been failed.
Hmm.
And therefore, now we have a right to demand those rivers back because they took our rivers for a project which they could not do. So they should return our rivers back.
Hmm.
65 years is enough time,
But what you have
you
very
know, which they
amply,
lost.
very
Therefore,
clearly explained what was wrong with Indus Water Treaty and why Pakistan was at a disadvantage. I fail to
and you see,
understand, although, why Pakistan
let,
got into this if this was
let,
so
let, let,
disadvantageous.
let me let me add two very important points here because after all this preamble,
Hmm.
the two very important things is one, that Pakistan can go to international court and ask these three rivers back because of the failure in Rajasthan. Number two, those that those dirty water drains,
Hmm.
they should not be there. No sane person in the world, in his right mind, his or her right mind, would agree that the pollution should be fed from the upper riparian to the lower riparian.
Hmm.
But as long as this treaty was being honored by
Hmm.
us, so-called by the two countries,
Hmm.
we agreed not to go to the international courts. We agreed that any dispute arising between the countries will be solved within the mechanisms which was given in the so-called treaty.
Okay. But
So
now
we
it is
could not,
in
we were
abeyance.
obliged not to go out of that. But
Hmm.
the moment they say that it is held in abeyance,
Hmm.
oh, boy, we got the opportunity actually. Actually, I think our team should already have been in The Hague
Hmm.
and should have filed these two petitions in the International Court of Justice that we want our rivers back and
Hmm.
we want those dirty drains to be shut down.
But Dr. Saab, can India, which is the most obvious threat that is in the mind of every Pakistani right now, can India stop our water after
No, no.
they are upper riparian? How
They are
can
upper. Okay. All the water they could stop, they have already stopped. And they have permission to stop more, which they haven't been able to stop in the next 65 years.
permission by
They permission means treaty allows
they
them
can allows them? Okay.
treaty allows them to take 7% water from the western rivers.
Hmm.
They have not yet been able to develop their capacity to get 7% water out of the western rivers. And that is why Mr. Modi a few years ago was making statements that Pakistan is using our water. We will not let our water flow into Pakistan. Blood and water cannot flow together. All those rhetoric statements that he made, he was referring to the water that India has not yet been able to develop capacity to take out of the provisions of the treaty. So this is
And
what my
that
point
water
is.
has to be taken from the eastern rivers.
Eastern are shut completely. They could take 100% of the eastern rivers, but they could not take even 7% of western rivers, given the difficulty of those mountains,
Hmm.
given the difficulty of that geology, and given the cost of financing and the rate of return on that. How much water after spending, how much money you will get? You will get peanuts of water after spending tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So
For our viewers, once again, the three western rivers are Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab, right? And the
yes,
eastern rivers are Satluj, Beas, and Ravi.
exactly.
So you are saying that Satluj, Beas, and Ravi are completely shut?
Yes, they
Okay.
they are shut down. They are completely shut. Uh,
What
uh,
happened there? Why and who shut them down?
India, I mean,
Shut them,
they
shut them
af-
in
af-
Pakistan.
they had almost built all the infrastructure which was required to shut down these rivers
Hmm.
even before the treaty.
Okay.
And and if Pakistan had not signed the treaty in 1960,
Hmm.
Pakistan could have taken not just India but
Hmm.
also the outfits which complied with India on those projects, which
Hmm.
also included, by the way, World Bank. So
Hmm.
that is why World Bank was interested that if they get this document signed,
Hmm.
they are they don't have any fear of facing international courts in the future.
Hmm.
So
So,
I
hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
American companies which built all those things and other foreign companies which helped India build all those infrastructure, and the financial institutions which helped build India those infrastructure before the treaty, diverting and stopping the water of a lower riparian without any negotiations, without any concrete treaty or any agreement, that was against international laws, and they could have been taken to the court. But the thing is,
Hmm.
if a murder is committed and I am the heir of the person murdered,
Hmm.
and I just say, they, okay, no problem. I agree with the murderer that he did the right thing,
Hmm.
or I do not go to the court in order to get the person punished.
Hmm.
But that murder has been committed. and we became those guardians of those. We accepted the murder of our rivers. We accepted the murder of our environment by pollution. And this pollution thing is not trivial. South
I
Punjab,
understand, yeah. And we will
children are
further,
suffering from kidney diseases and liver diseases, unheard of anywhere in the world. The children are suffering from these diseases. They lose their eyesight in their 20s because that
are you
pollution has
saying that
become.
our people are actually drinking that drained water?
That is the only source of water in South Punjab, because the rivers which bring the water
Hmm.
are being fed by these dirty drains. We add more water from the western rivers through link canals into these rivers. It mixes up with all that sewerage and all those nasty things coming in, and then that is diverted into the irrigation system, where it has become part of the food chain. And the people, well, most people cannot afford bottled water, and they have no choice but to drink from that water. No wonder that there is stunt growth. No wonder that the exports from that area, agriculture exports, they are rejected in the international market once they find out toxins as part of the fabric of those the food items. And unfortunately, our children are drinking that water.
That's shocking. But we will have a separate discussion, a whole new episode on what you have just said about the drainage that India is doing in Pakistan, its impacts, what we could have done and we did not do, why such a treaty was, if it was so disadvantageous, if the negative impacts were so many, why our people, our leaders could not think of anything else but to sign this treaty. We'll have all those discussions. But right now, I want to understand from you is that if India cannot stop water right now immediately, because one, it cannot, it doesn't have the capacity, and two, you said that it can be challenged in the international fora of justice.
Yes.
So immediately India cannot do it.
No.
I was looking at Indian netizens. So, I mean, we can take it. Pakistanis have brilliantly been taking it for good humor, but some strategic analyst, defense analyst who was appealing to the people of India that they should pollute the waters going downstream into Pakistan with all kinds of things, including pigs' feces, etc. So, and you said they're already doing it. They're already
Yes.
doing what?
They are already sending those 4 drains to us. That's enough of pollution. That's worse than
No,
the
I'm not talking of drains. So, no, they are not talking
being
of the drains
suggested.
only. They are
I
talking about
know.
the water, the rivers, the
They
river.
want to do it with the running rivers,
Yeah,
western rivers as well.
yeah.
If that comes from an official, that official could be taken to the ICC for committing a war crime or for committing ecocide. If Modi makes a statement that not a drop of water, we will let not a drop of water flow into Pakistan, well, that's again a war crime because it's against Geneva Convention. You cannot stop the water. You cannot destroy the water resources, agriculture resources, food producing resources, food grains of the civilian population during a war or a political conflict. And if you do that, that amounts to a war crime. So let them say it, and we should immediately go to ICC and register a case of war crime against anyone who makes such a statement, anyone who shows such an intention.
That's an official. Yeah,
And
I
make
mean,
it official. Make
yeah.
it off. We have these. Actually, right now we have some very good legal grounds,
Hmm.
because as long as we were bound by the treaty, we could not go to the international courts. We
Hmm.
could not go to ICC or anything.
Hmm.
We had to follow the mechanisms given in the treaty. But now suddenly, a big window of opportunity has opened up in order to
Window
fix
of
all these
opportunity. Yeah.
problems.
So
That
Pakistanis who
because
are worried,
if we had gone otherwise, we would be accused of breaching the treaty. But now we cannot be accused of breaching the treaty. They have breached the treaty and we should take advantage. This is why I'm saying that our delegations should have already been there in The Hague, and we should have filed the petition against the complete shutting down of river on environmental grounds, pollution on environmental and humanitarian and other grounds, the destruction of delta as an ecological system of global significance, which has all been destroyed because of the outcomes of this treaty. So this is the time we should move on
Yeah.
and move very
Agree.
aggressive.
Okay, but can India, another question that that has been raised so many times by so many Pakistanis, can India cause floods in Pakistan?
Oh, floods, we should welcome those floods. Let them cause it. I'm looking forward to those floods because flood is
But that
water.
would bring a lot of death and destruction in
Oh
Pakistan.
no, people will only die if they stand in the way.
Hmm. But
We
our
should
cities and villages would be in the way.
hang on. We have ways and means to deal with. Okay, let the river flow.
Hmm.
That's something I had been suggesting. My first TED talk on it was, I think, in 2018 or 2017, something like that. Okay, let the river flow means open up the river corridor. If the flood comes, it will flow. There's a memory of the rivers have a memory. Basically, it's the topography, the landform. The flood will flow in its own path. Let it come, let it flow in its path, and whatever we have encroached in the flood paths, we should, get out of that path. And whatever is left, that should be protected by some risk management scheme, and there are plenty of that. We don't have to reinvent anything. There are plenty of flood risk management schemes which are for the active floodplains. We should immediately invoke those risk management schemes and get as many assets and people out of the floodways, develop those plans, train our people, and wait for the floods and
But the
welcome those
problem is,
floods. And it had been in our culture, like people in Hakra River, down south in Satluj, used to celebrate floods in Hakra because floods in Hakra were a part of monsoons only. And when the floods would come, they would celebrate, they would dance, and and then the floods would finish, the river would be dry, but the bed of the river and the sands of the river would be recharged, and they would keep on getting that water from their wells for their animals, for their domestic use and everything. So that was a celebration. Now
yeah,
that
I
Hakra River,
understand that. I
Hakra
understand.
River was closed by India without any treaty.
Hmm.
They just shut it down. Its flood waters, its monsoon waters don't flow into Pakistan anymore, and there is no treaty on Hakra River. And that has been shut, and Pakistan has never asked, never raised this question at any forum that why Hakra has been closed. You were allowed to close Satluj, Ravi, and Byas, not Hakra, but they have closed that one too. Then, when this flood water, why I say we should welcome it? Because it's water. And when we open up the rivers, you see all our large rivers, they are on the sandy beds. And we have had very detailed investigations on those sandy beds. They are at an average 6.3 kilometers wide, and the length is like 3,500 kilometers. And the depth of clean water that the sand contains is up to a depth of 1,000 feet. And when the flood would come, it would recharge that sand. And then that sand overall can contain more than 1,000 to 1,500 days of storage under the riverbeds. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so that kind of a flood, that release of water into the riverbed is like a gold mine running onto us. Why should we be worried? We should be prepared, fully prepared to welcome those floods because water is not a curse. Water is an asset.
The problem is, Dr.
Why should we be worried? I
Dr.
mean, this
Bas,
is a very, very,
just
I mean,
listen to me. Let's
wrong
for 1 minute. Just listen.
thinking that we
Just
should be worried if flood is
just
coming.
for 1 minute. Listen to me. Dr. Abbas, I wish I could. I mean, the problem is that In Pakistan, floods have caused a lot of mayhem even in the recent past. Sindh was devastated in 2021, as recent as that, 2021, 2022. And we have had almost a yearly cycle of these, every other year we have been, and Sindh is devastated by this. Why did, if floods were so good for Pakistan, why didn't we invoke, activate all these systems or all this mechanism then, and try to save our people suffer at the hands of floods? Why didn't we do that if we could?
The thing is, we are not prepared to take advantage of these floods. The same Indus Water Treaty, and prior to that, the development models that were invoked in Indus Basin by the British are not compatible with nature. From day one, they are incompatible with nature. And with climate change, that incompatibility is being exposed more often than it was being exposed before. You see, the landscape of Sindh, you are talking about Sindh, the landscape of Sindh is very flat along the rivers. And a hydrological phenomena called the sheet flow, used to carry excessive waters from the landscape gradually into the delta, and would bring a lot of fertility to the land. And after the floods, people will have bumper crops and they will celebrate it, and their aquifers would be recharged, their groundwater wells would be sweetened and raised, and everything was happening there. That was nature. What we did, we made a lot of structures in those plains. We made canals which was higher than the ground. We made roads which were higher than the ground. We made railways which were higher than the ground. Now these linear structures crisscross each other. Look at the satellite pictures. They crisscross each other and make so many polygons and closed bodies all across the landscape. And this time, 2022, it was rainfall coming from the sky. And it got trapped into those cells, and water had nowhere to go. Otherwise, as a sheet flow, it would go and replenish the delta and enter into the sea.
But we
And
do have this infrastructure now. So every flood is going to do the same, no?
so we have to adapt in a plan which is gradual, methodological, and we have to phase out old, outdated, incompatible infrastructure and phase in the infrastructure which is more compatible with the rivers. Now, what they did, they put flood dikes alongside the rivers, so the river doesn't fan out, expand into the floodplains. What did that do? Floodplains lost groundwater, and the rivers, they would, because they would not spread out, they would bring more flood downstream. Because it would flood, expand and flood upstream, less water will come and flood downstream. Now, that was the mechanism nature had made. The things were in balance by nature. So the lower part, the Sindh, it could only absorb as much flood as the nature had built its capacity to. But now, when floods are protected by dikes upstream, more flood comes downstream, and the landscape of Sindh is not able to handle it. And lo and behold, then we put all those crisscross infrastructures and stuff. And the flood waters which come from the sky, not from the river, they have two types of slopes. One is going into the ocean, to the delta, and the other one is gradually moving to the river. So those are two kinds of slopes. Now,
I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there, Dr. Sab, because there's the time limit is hampering us here. But we will continue this discussion. This was very, very informative and very reassuring as well with you. Thank you very much for your invaluable insights. Viewers, in the aftermath of Pahalgam, The battleground, as you see, has been expanded from borders and battlefields to river basins and irrigation canals. So now water is no longer just a life source, it's now a weapon. India has successfully made it into one. For Pakistan, the threat is twofold. I mean, I can share some of the optimism from our guest, Dr. Hassan Abbas, but it's still the external aggression and internal decay are two kinds of threats that have emerged over the last few days. We knew about the internal decay, but the external aggression has come into a new with a new scale, where not just the strategic and security issues are on the center of the table, but this sources like water have now been weaponized. Without urgent reforms in water governance, in the conservation, diplomacy, the greatest casualty may not be political, but human survival itself. So we once again thank you to Dr. Hassan Abbas and thank you all for watching it so far. Um, uh, Stay informed, stay engaged, and demand accountability before the rivers run dry. You have been watching Unraveled, and I'm your host, Marvi Sirmed. Have a good one.